Hello, trading is closed on September 11th, 2014, and I'm Tennant. Yesterday we had a few calls. I was expecting a sharp gap down, which we got. mejt had a target of 1987.17, which printed, and as always there was support under the target. I also said I anticipated us trading outside of the day's range fairly soon. That didn't happen, and I want to come back to that later. mejt gave a sell signal in the afternoon, but the target was hit immediately and there was no trade. The system also said that the rally would not stick until this time had passed, which worked. Well, there's no mejt target for tomorrow, and that forces us to use other stuff. Usually, when we have a pattern like this, the next day, which would have been today, we trade outside the range fast. Instead, sometimes, like today, we get a carbon copy of the previous day. That is to say, an early drop and an all-day rally. When you get a carbon copy, usually you have the same prediction. A quick trade outside of the range, ideally with a gap, and preferably with a gap under the day's low. Let's see some other reasons why I think that's a reasonable expectation for tomorrow. There is incredible resistance at today's high. Here's part of it. If you measure not from the exact peak but from the subsequent peak, you'll see we have a 61.8% retracement. If you look at the weekly chart, we'll see we're right at the edge of the stop loss for the sell signal. So if we have a good rally tomorrow, it's good enough, the major league sell signal on the weekly chart will fail. For that reason, I think we're at resistance. Here's a very interesting pattern. On the 15-minute chart, we had sequential and combo sell signals. We had 9 more bars of setup, turning the signals into what's known as 9-13-9 signals. If you're going to get a buy signal like this, you would like to go over the TDST line fairly quickly. That would be this one. But you really should go over this TDST line, the origin of these 9 bars, very soon. Instead, we have repeatedly stalled right at the line and found resistance there. Resistance goes to 1 bar past the line, so we're still at resistance. Even worse, at resistance, we have 13 bars giving us a new sequential sell signal and invalidating the buy signal. It's basically a pretty bullish pattern when you start off low and rally all day long. We've done that twice in a row. But it's not so positive when you rally to resistance and can't break through it. It's not so good when you can't even break over one of the prior highs. In other words, we have relatively positive patterns which don't produce any substantial gains. Now, it was a bit surprising that this retest of the origin of the left stilt didn't lead to anything. Usually, it leads to a big drop. I would forgive today's indiscretion if we would gap down sharply under this low, which would show that today's action didn't really count. If we were going to have a big drop, that's what I would like to see. But we're at resistance based on many different patterns, And if we're going to break through, I would prefer to see it with a gap up. For tomorrow, mejt doesn't have a call. I think there's a reasonable chance that we have a gap outside of today's range that gives us a clue as to what's going to happen. There is substantial resistance at today's highs, and for that reason, I believe the gap will be down. I freely admit this is not a lock, and I'm personally not willing to risk any money on the prediction overnight. I think tomorrow's open will clarify the picture considerably, and that is today's call.